Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, and everybody else all across the world, welcome to the first ever seventh episode of the Screen and Pitch Project with your hosts MGK and
Hey y'all.
what's up, guys? So this is being recorded on the 22nd of September 2024. It is officially the end of summer here in London. It's not quite fully, gloomy and depressing, but the weather's definitely taken a turn for the worse. It's quite underwhelming, which is quite fitting because that is also what can be used to describe the team we're going to talk about today and the experience we both are probably going to have right today, which is because we're going to talk about our favorite Manchester United players, a club that is easily the one that I dislike the most, in part because of how a lot of the players generally were just, arrogant and used to get away with a lot of things, but also the fandom, especially growing up in India. Manchester United fans had a reputation for being both ill informed and obnoxious, and they more than lived up to it a lot of times. So, yeah. But despite that, obviously, they've had some fantastic players over the years, also some inoffensive ones, if I'm being honest. So, those comprise my list of favorite Manchester United players.
This is the closest to the most hated characters episode football version because these are characters playing for a team that I despise. Easily aligned in terms of the team that I would hate to see win the most was Manchester United. And it wasn't particularly close. Arsenal would come there every once in a while, but at least for the majority of my Chelsea fandom, especially the initial years, it was always Manchester United as the villain,
Yeah, same.
always just a back and forth battle with them and always being outnumbered 50 to 1 in terms of fans in India. And it's all they all wear their United jerseys. They all have this annoying red connection that really makes no sense to anybody. And they're rooting for a team that just happened to be winning at the time. So it's like the same bandwagon fans that aren't interesting enough to make a more interesting choice.
Yeah. Um, but before we get started, this episode of the Screen and Pitch Project is proudly sponsored by Master Hate. Do you find yourself blaming the cost of living crisis on immigrants climbing walls to get into your country and take both minimum wage and highly skilled jobs instead of, I don't know, governments actually taxing the wealthy? Or are you frothing over government rations for the homeless but celebrating a billionaire taking over a city for his son's wedding? Then try Master Hate, a 69-day training program to take all that bigotry, negativity, toxicity, anger, and hatred inside you and focus it on those who really need it: corrupt politicians, evil billionaires, and those people who play music out loud in public. Don't just hate, master hate.
Okay, that was incredible. I was enjoying it too much to think of a one-liner because I was just so I was enjoying it way too much.
Honestly, I think this is the peak because
Yeah.
after this, it's like getting harder and harder to come up with shit. So, all right. So, most favorite Manchester United players of all time, honorable mentions in three, two, one.
Interesting list. For me to kick off, I wanted to explain my thought process behind this, and later I will be giving a lot more flowers to Manchester United players. But for the honorable mentions, I wanted to focus on the ones that have brought me the most joy, and those have been the biggest flops and the most entertaining United players, in my opinion. The first is Phil Jones, central defender, made hilarious faces, but I also kind of respect him because despite limited physical gifts, he battled on the pitch, but would always be there for a funny moment. I think his off the ground clearance with his face is one of my favorite kind of meme moments that Manchester United has produced. The second is Harry Maguire, who unfortunately has turned into was turning into a better player than he was initially with United. But all of the hilarious memes of him being the best goal scorer that United was playing against, rather than the best goal stopper, was fantastic. Great to enjoy. Again, respect as a player, just like the third person on this list, Paul Pogba, would tantalize United fans with his talent. You would hear all of the millions of Indians, Singaporeans, and East Asians all supporting Paul Pogba's brilliance and talent and genius, and then every single time he would let them down, which was fantastic. By far the best part. But to be fair, watching him, you did get those moments of brilliance as well. The last two, I think, very limited to no moments of brilliance. Well, one is now, I think, already has more moments with Chelsea than he did with Manchester United in Jadon Sancho and Anthony. Just absolutely perfect modern meme players when it's a team you hate. You have Anthony just spinning around in circles, dramatic antics on the sideline, and absolutely no threat of performing on the pitch. Same with Jadon Sancho, all the late training stories, all the drama that annoys the hell out of your friends. Absolutely fantastic, valuable players. But don't worry, Manchester United fans, my list turns much more positive after this, but I had to get this out of my system.
Fair enough, right? Phil Jones, I actually thought was, just like unfortunate with injury, but had the potential to be a really good player. Yes, he had all those meme moments, but like in a way, the fact that he was still
Yeah.
playing and still had his wits about him when he was lying on the ground kind of shows how good he was. And I thought he was a really good player, so he could have made my list. And like my list is all unironic, like players that I just appreciate. Harry Maguire not as bad as the meme suggests, but yeah, underwhelming so far at United for the price tag. Paul Pogba, I think, is actually a really good player, and he was closest to making at least honorable mentions. He didn't make my list, spoilers, but I just always thought, because I used to watch Paul Pogba for France, and I was a fan of that player, so it's hard for me to look at him in a meme worthy way as such. Jadon Sancho flop just was so unimpressive whenever he played for United. Anthony is both unimpressive and dislikable. In some ways, that makes him the perfect Manchester United player. But yeah, fair mentions. Like I said, I've been unironic with my picks. Marcus Rashford is the weakest member of this group. Not because he's a bad player, just because I'm very indifferent towards him. He's just like a good dude, good player, really good player. Scores a lot of goals against us. Is quite deadly against us, and is genuinely terrifying in one-on-one situations. Obviously, has lost his way a little bit, but really good player. Edwin van der Sar he just came across as this like stately old uncle, respectable sort of uncle at the back, just like a stalwart goalkeeper. Like it almost seemed rude to score past him. He just gave off that vibe. Uh, if that made sense, like no nonsense, just no flash, went about his business. Um, John O'Shea is here just because, not because he was a really good player, but just because I remember thinking it was really cool to have such a versatile player in your squad, and he was such a handy Swiss knife player to have. And I always appreciate these kind of players in any squad, right? They're so useful to be able to come in as a rotation option and play left back, right back, centre back, right mid, left mid, centre mid at the drop of a hat at a high enough level that the team can get a 6 to 7 on 10 out of you while more established stars get a rest is a fairly thankless role. And United at that time had some of those really good squad rotation players, right? Darren Fletcher, John O'Shea. Yeah, John O'Shea was just super versatile, and I just, always found that cool. Antonio Valencia was like that as well. He was like sign anything. He wore the number 7 for a while. Fun fact, right? I think one of the many failed number 7s they had after Ronaldo.
Post Ronaldo.
Yeah. But he wasn't more so a failure in the sense of, okay, he wasn't a flamboyant number 7, but what he turned out to be was like a very earnest right back. He refused to use his left foot for some reason. You'd never see him with his shirt tucked out. He always seemed like, he was playing for like a very strict Sunday school or something, just super disciplined, humble, and just like down to earth sort of demeanor. So, yeah, just inoffensive, right? Paul Scholes was my kind of player, right? I didn't like him much. But again, right, fairly low profile, kept to himself, had the nasty tackle in him. But he was so good at those long passes that would just drop on a dime. And it was just so cool to see. So yeah, don't like him too much. He just had that, again, that arrogance of the Manchester United of that era. In his case, I would say it's probably deserved because he is amazing. But yeah, those are my honorable mentions.
I think a couple of players were close to my list. None of them actually made it on. One was Scholes, but I think the discourse around Scholes would annoy me that, oh, he's as good as Lampard and Gerrard, and it'd be just so many Manchester United fans saying that, oh, you don't appreciate his genius. Like, yes, he's, and I think that led me to appreciate his genius less than I should have in some aspects. Rashford, again, I think a lot of it is just the fandom around these players
Yeah.
drives me insane,
Yeah.
where it was trying to treat Rashford as someone on the level of the real league grade Premier League strikers, which he, I mean, gave glimpses for, but never had the consistency to do. Uh, Valencia and John O'Shea kind of grouped together, right? Like defensive players, really good at their shift, consistent, part of I think the final era of United dominance, and then leaking into uh, post Fergie years as well. And then Van der Sar was the rival to Czech, great goalie, so consistent. Also didn't seem, compared to Schmeichel, was a big upgrade in terms of not a complete asshole.
Yeah.
Um, so at least you, because yeah, Schmeichel used to drive me absolutely insane as a Chelsea fan, just because it was just this obnoxious idiot who could stop everything. While Van der Sar at least was more polite about it.
Yeah. Fair enough. All right. Moving into our top 10 favorite Manchester United players of all time in three, two, one.
Oh wow!
Oh, well, yeah. Um, so Park Ji-sung used to play in the Arsenal games, right? Where Fergie would play rope-a-dope with Wenger, where it'll be like, okay, we have most of the ball, and then they just hit us on the counter. Park Ji-sung would play in those games, and he would annoy the living hell out of whoever our midfielders were at the time, right? Fabregas, Denilson, God. But Fabregas primarily, Nasri, all these guys, right? He used to do this in all the big games because of his relentless stamina and his absolute willingness to just serve himself up for the team, for the greater good of the team. Really annoying player to have your team face up against. But again, just did his job, no nonsense, but also a pathbreaker in so many ways and a pioneer for us as Asians, right? Like, obviously huge for South Korea, but to see somebody from Asia just playing for the top team in England in at arguably the best league in the world at the time is such a sort of inspiration for pretty much anyone from like this part of the world, right? So yeah, shout out to Park Ji Sung, the man with three lungs, as you rightly said.
Yes, I mean, incredible player, classic, the trying to erase the other team's best player, man mark, and just chase and make that guy's day a living nightmare. Uh, I think did his job on the ball as well, but was really known for his defensive responsibilities. But in the top 10 list, again, for a bit more than what he did on the pitch and the representation. So I was living in South Korea for part of his United tenure and just seeing the fandom around that. I think Sun has surpassed it just
Yeah,
because of the nature of his game, but Park Ji-sung was really the first. And Manchester United was just everywhere in the early 2000s in Asia. I think it's hard to appreciate
yeah,
it now, but it was
yeah.
like a monoculture. It was just
Oh my God, yeah, yeah.
all
I don't
United
think
matches
people.
on TVs.
Yeah, yeah. It was just Manchester United. Like,
Yeah,
do you remember the song 10 Sports did? Come on, you Reds, just
yeah.
keep the bottle and lose your heads for in 90 minutes. We'll let them know if we're Man United. Here we go. That song used to play non-stop. I've never heard it before or since. It used to play non-stop, and that's what drove a big
Yeah,
a big part of this is actually what drove me away from Manchester United. I knew that if I wanted to support a team, it was going to be not Manchester United. Like I can't deal with this like non-stop advertising thrown in my face. Um, but yeah, sorry.
but yes, but to see a nation, to see a South Korean on that team performing at the highest level, playing in the biggest games, he was one of the big game players for Fergie. Like to kind of change the other team's approach, to take the engine of the other team out of the game. So to see really the first Asian, at least for our generation, on this stage was quite monumental. So Park Ji Sung came in at number 10.
Yeah. Sorry for the tangent, by the way.
No, no, it's a good tangent.
Okay. Um, cool. So, favorite Manchester United player number nine in three, two, one.
So Dwight York was the first real striker I remember. So it was Dwight York, Andy Cole, the United combo at the top when I became a football fan. And it was around, I think the treble winning season is like the first season I knew what like the Premier League really was. So seeing the two of them at the top just banging in goals. York was definitely the more creative player, had a bit more in terms of like laying the ball off, setting up moves, and then crazy finishes. Towards the end of his career at United, he started getting injuries and kind of slowed down a little bit. But I enjoyed his play a lot more than most of the United strikers like Van Nistelrooy after him, who was just more of a pure poacher. Like York still had a lot of it, flair in the game, kind of enjoyment, and yeah, not. I don't know. He didn't. He never frustrated me like some of the other United strikers did.
Okay, yeah. Before my time, I mean, I know who he is, but never really watched him play, so don't have much to say. So I will move on quietly to my number nine, right? David De Gea. Essentially, Manchester United's best player for a couple of seasons, and it's testament to how fun it was to say this, that Man United was so awful that their goalkeeper routinely had to be their best player. And he was spectacular, right? There's something about goalkeepers where if they're not complete assholes, it's hard to like root against them because their job is such an underdog job anyway. So when a goalkeeper's called into action again and again and keeps coming out on top, it's hard to really, feel antagonistic against him. Like, yes, you feel frustrated, but beyond that, you don't really feel like, anger towards them or whatever. And in that way, David De Gea just was a spectacular shot stopper, right? He had his flaws. He wasn't gonna be the best at commanding his box and coming out and claiming crosses and stuff. But on his line, some of the saves he would make were just outrageous, right? Just saving United again and again. There's this like save from Luis Suarez where even he couldn't believe what he had just seen. Just absolutely spectacular and really saved United from becoming, um, you know, even worse than they were at times in the last decade, single-handedly sometimes, right? So yeah, I mean, shout out to just like Hollywood goalkeeping, right? David De Gea.
Yeah, I mean, I'll talk about him more later on in this list. Iconic player for the last, I think, post Fergie era.
Yeah.
Uh, had incredibly beautiful saves. Probably not as good in, especially like distribution, so had his limitations. But as a pure shot stopper, which is what you want to see, absolutely incredible.
All right. So favorite Manchester United player number eight in three, two, one. Nani was kind of like the Ronaldo regen, right? They were like, oh, we just follow the same formula again and hopefully it succeeds, right? Oh, tricky winger from Sporting Lisbon, Portuguese. Um, buy him at like when he's like a teenager and he's going to turn into a world beater, right? Simple, right? Um, the fact that it almost worked twice is magic because Nani was a very, very good player, right? Obviously didn't, hit Ronaldo levels, but then who did, right? Was much more of a traditional winger, really fast, skillful, dribbly. Had a great cross on him, which I really liked at the point of time. I really liked those, fiercely whipped crosses in. Had some outrageous skill and amazing goal moments. Had a great shot on him and the iconic celebration, right? Really flamboyant player. Um, Easy to sort of enjoy when he's not playing against your team. And yeah, so Nani number eight.
So I will talk about Nani a little bit more very soon. But in terms of iconic skills and moves on the pitch, I think Berbatov is in the same element as Nani. Uh, Completely mercurial player, I would say a lot more inconsistent than Nani was, but came up with some of the most incredible moments. The spin on the sideline, on the far touchline, is probably one of the greatest assists in Premier League history. Absolutely magnetic on the pitch. You had no idea what would happen when he would get the ball. Probably wouldn't fit into modern football as well, just because he liked to play the game the way he wanted to play, which was more to embarrass the opponent and see what he could do rather than try and score a goal efficiently. But as someone watching, that's great. Like I want to watch someone who's trying to humiliate his opponent rather than score the goal. And Berbatov did that. He definitely didn't track back, was not a kind of complete modern day player, but absolutely magnetic to watch.
Yeah, I'll talk about Berbatov later in my list, so we can move on to number seven then. In three, two, one.
Yes. Well, didn't have to wait long to get back to Nani. So I thought of him as, again, a streets won't forget kind of player. So incredible skills, incredible crosses, Travellas as well. He had some of the most beautiful assists, um, crossing into out of the strike. I mean, he was there during the Van Persie years
Yeah,
as
yeah, yeah,
well.
yeah.
Um, and came in as, yes, the hyped, okay, we've done this once with Ronaldo, we're going to do it again with Nani. Didn't quite reach that level, but was a joy to watch and looked like he was having the most fun on the pitch. So
Yeah.
celebrated with like full zest, was like playing his heart off on the field. Great player to watch and great talent. Just a kind of a classic, fantastic Manchester United player, but one you could all root for.
Yeah. I will say this though, when I was doing this presentation, um, that kit is a beautiful
It
red.
is a beautiful kid.
It's a
Yes.
beautiful kit. Like, yeah, could be an all-timer. Um, so my number seven is Chicharito, Javier Hernandez, right? What a weird player, right? He could just sniff a goal out of anywhere. Do you remember the one where he scores like almost like off his back or his shoulder, where he
Yeah.
misses the header, but he still instinctively just scores, right? And that's just what he was. He was a limited player who could just score a goal out of nowhere. The perfect super sub, um, utterly lovable. It felt like, almost like a cartoon character that started playing football in the most realistic and like unpredictable way possible, right? Really fun player to watch. So yeah, Chicharito just scores goals.
Yeah. Our lists are kind of hilarious in some way, and I think we should move on to number six.
Okay, number six in three, two, one. Okay, so this is more a player that I really liked who ended up going to Manchester United rather than a lot of his time at Man United. Edinson Cavani was, if you ask me, in mid 2000s when Arsenal were clamoring for a striker to sort of upgrade on Giroud, Cavani would have been at the top of my list after Luis Suarez. Um, we didn't get Suarez, we didn't try for Cavani. Just a really good player. Was watching a lot during COVID because that's when he was playing, and while he was obviously a little older, just had the same sort of selfless work rate for the team, great finisher, really humble, sort of experienced voice on the pitch for Man United during the Ole era when they were actually not too bad. So yeah, shout out to Edinson Cavani.
Yeah, fantastic striker, I think, across all the teams he's played for. I think I associate him more for some reason with PSG than Manchester United,
Yeah, yeah,
but was fantastic during his time at United. Classic striker, kind of in the Diego Costa mold, like will just finish his opportunities. Not quite as much of a troublemaker as Costa, but not too far behind, honestly.
yeah,
Great physical presence, could kind of do everything that you would want from a modern day striker.
yeah.
My number six is the first player I've picked from an era before I started watching football actively. Like, I never watched a live match on TV of Eric Cantona, but after hearing more about him and then doing a little bit of research and then watching some fantastic YouTube compilations that definitely give a full accurate picture, had to put him on the list. Just kind of for both what he represented, opening up the foreign players into the Premier League, leading to players like Thierry Henry coming in, and also for starting the dominance of Manchester United. So before he came, they hadn't won in 25 years. Eric Cantona comes in, pairs up with this plucky little Scottish manager, and everything changes in the Premier League era. The iconic popped collar, so he had that. He had iconic quotes about seagulls, and I mean, I'm going to read it out because I can barely understand it even now. When the seagulls follow the trawler, it is because they think sardines will be thrown into the sea. And this was the response that he had after karate kicking a fan. The fan did deserve it, apparently, though. So, yeah, but that's King Cantona. And then, of course, the contributions on the pitch, the flair on the pitch. He could do a bit of everything. Perfect modern day striker. Incredible arrogance on the pitch as well, which I think also kind of got into the United DNA after he joined the club.
Yeah, no. I mean, honestly, it didn't even register to me to even think about Cantona because I was just focused on all the players that I had seen. Um, I had seen live basically. Um, But honestly, the moment you said Eric Cantona, I was like, oh my God, how could I not think of him? Because he would probably be very, very high up on my list if I had thought of that. Just a pioneer of a player, right? To bring that swagger, that personality with that absolute skill on a football pitch, right? He wasn't just good. It was like watching a performance on the pitch, the way he scored some of those goals. The one where he sits down half the team and then just like nonchalantly just chips the ball in. This is iconic, right? Just I love Eric Cantona, and I just didn't really register him as a Manchester United player in my head because I was looking at players I'd seen live. But absolute favorite of mine. And yeah, like swagger is the word to describe him.
Oh, okay, yeah. So I messed up. I initially had Chicharito as my number 6, and then I switched him for Cantona and threw Chicharito out. So I thought I was going to enter into Chicharito.
That's fine. That's fine. I fucked up by not having Cantona on my list because I forgot about him. Anyway,
Oh man, I was
that's
like,
fine.
oh, it's gonna be so funny because it's gonna flip and Chicharito, and then I was like, oh shit, I just changed him. Uh,
We're not editing this out. This is just fun.
uh,
Cool.
okay.
Top five Man United players. Number five in three, two, one.
Okay, now we come to really, I think, the cream of the crop.
Yeah,
The United players that really were dominating my early years of fandom, and but were just so incredible on the pitch that you
yeah,
couldn't help but admire everything that they did. So I'm starting with Cristiano Ronaldo, arguably the best player to ever play in the Premier League, even though his peak years were not in the Premier League. uh and this was in his like Brat era, his
yeah.
like most fun, obnoxious, in your face, dominant era. The free kick goals that were out of the world that make him still try and ridiculous free kicks now, but back then they actually went in. You should check it out. The dribbling was just incredible. The speed of the step overs, the moves that he tried was just, it was just magnetic to watch. He honestly would be higher if that wasn't like the peak of the Chelsea United rivalry, where it felt like these are the two best clubs in the world. I mean, of course, you have Barcelona, Madrid, and all, but they were right there, and he was just so frustrating to go against. We even with having arguably the best defender to ever go up against him in Ashley Cole, but he was just so frustrating to watch Ronaldo. I think seeing him cry at the Champions League final was joyful, honestly.
Yeah, I'll talk about Ronaldo later. But another guy who could claim to the number one crown in terms of the best player of that era, along with Ronaldo, in fact, is probably his only competition was Wayne
Yep.
Rooney, right? Rooney was very dislikable at a flat out, oh, this is just such a violent thug playing football kind of way. That it was as simple as that, right? Um, because he had this ferocity about him. Like Rooney was fierce, right? This kid, right? And he was a kid, but he had the build and and the ferocity of a man, just absolutely going full ham, full pelt, and it was terrifying to see, right? Um, but he played with so much fire that it was hard not to admire him. And again, like when he wasn't doing it against your team, it was just stunning to watch, right? Um, he had a he had a down to earthness about him, like when he got punched out or something, and then he scores the next day, and he sort of fakes a celebration where he like pretends to get knocked out on the pitch, like that just displayed like a human side to him that just made him more likable to me. Would give his all for the team. Just a physical specimen, right? This man would do anything to win, like anything that if you got in the way of the whirlwind that is Wayne Rooney, just know that it was never personal. He just wanted to win, and that's why he just got ripped to shreds. And there's something, you know, admirable about someone who's just so focused and just so driven. And yeah, I always have been an admirer of Wayne Rooney's talent, and that's why he's number five on my list, because he also was the reason for a lot of my frustration and painful moments.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, really higher on my list. Absolutely incredible player. Probably the player I would want on a Chelsea team the most,
Yeah,
just because he embodies everything you want of a player for your club.
yeah, fair enough. Cool. Number four in three, two, one. Okay, cool. Again, I've been very focused on players only. Um, Carlos Tevez, he was a brief part of a very glorious sort of era for Manchester United, but he was such a tenacious pressing forward, right? He was really the first of a series of hardworking, intense, you know, pugnacious and prolific South American forwards who came into the Premier League, right? So we had the mid to like early 2011s was sorry 2010s was Aguero, Alexis Sanchez, Luis Suarez, right? Tevez was the front runner to them, where he had the same qualities, just relentless offensive pressure, like just pressing from the front, harrying defenders, getting the ball off them to score or assist. Again, like a player who just worked so hard, despite having so much quality, which was rare in forwards at the time.
Carlos Tevez with the bulldog-like approach. I don't know if anybody's played like FIFA 12, 13, but that was the constant thing commentators would say because it just represented him so perfectly. And it's, I think, like one of the most iconic FIFA commentary lines ever. And it honestly described him.
Yeah,
Incredible work rate on the pitch, great finisher, just an absolute unit as well. Like, don't go into a shoulder to shoulder with Carlos Tevez. Uh, and great striker. Kind of, yeah, brought in that South American generation, which then I think the early 2010s was kind of dominated by them. My number four, and this is the pro United rant that I will go on. And I just couldn't leave him off the list, even though, of course, he's not a player, is Sir Alex Ferguson, who is the greatest Premier League manager of all time, and it's not even close or debatable. All of this Pep nonsense is ridiculous. Like, yes, Pep is a great manager, but what Sir Alex Ferguson did is so far beyond what any other manager in the Premier League has done in terms of winning with, I would say, three different generations of teams, three completely distinct generations of teams, maybe even four if you really stretch it out. Winning no matter what the kind of talent on the pitch is, winning with formations changing, different managers coming in, being so tactically flexible that he could see what the new era was, adapt to it, and continue his dominance. And after he left, I mean, it didn't even take a half a season for everything to fall apart. And just that constant knowledge of knowing that no matter how well you're playing, Sir Alex Ferguson is probably going to win at the end. And to do that with different generations, and honestly, in some of the later years, pretty limited talent.
yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah. No, they were not great teams. It was really frustrating because they were not great teams.
yeah, yeah. I think until 2009, 2010, yes, absolutely great teams.
Yeah,
But then after that, they still won a couple more Premier Leagues with just completely mediocre teams
yeah, yeah,
grinding out wins.
yeah, yeah.
So,
No, yeah, greatest manager of the Premier League for sure, right? I agree with you on that front. Um, Pep is incredible. Pep is probably the best in terms of peaks he's hit, but greatest is Fergie.
yeah.
Fergie, what Sir Alex Ferguson did um, is unprecedented. It's incredibly difficult, and to stay two steps ahead of everyone else for 23 years, 23 years, 26 years, something like that, right? 26,
26, I think, yes.
26 something, 26 years. He won 13 league titles. Um, yeah, just a phenomenal manager, not a player. Um, and yeah, I think one of the most iconic lines in history is that my goal is to knock Liverpool off their perch, and you can print that. And then doing it over the course of 20 years later. I mean, just for that, the man is the greatest Premier League manager of all time, right? That is not, that's just, that's just history, son. That's iconic. That's poetic. Like, imagine saying that and backing it up after like 15, 20 years, right? I mean, respect.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Just absolute respect. I
yeah,
don't think there's anyone or any rival fan who doesn't respect Sir Alex.
yeah. I mean, absolutely no question, right? Cool. So, podium then.
The podium.
Favorite Manchester United player, number three, in three, two, one.
Okay. So mine is David Beckham. I mean, again, early 2000s, growing up in India, just seeing David Beckham everywhere. That was the peak of his superstardom. Had met his Spice Girl at that point, and he was just everywhere, and he was the icon. Bend It Like Beckham, iconic Indian movie of like the Indian expat experience and growing up abroad, all just due to the magnetic presence of this man. Like you could just found a movie based on just the word Beckham and people would go watch it. And he was a fantastic player as well. Like this is not even getting into what he did on the pitch, where he was actually, I think, a little underrated in terms of his actual defensive contributions and just doing the dirty work. Because he, for someone with such kind of a celebrity status, he was kind of workmanlike on the pitch and then just had the magical right foot, the iconic goals, the iconic crosses, the free kick that and the celebration afterwards. Just probably the most iconic player of before the Messi Ronaldo era for me.
Yeah,
Definitely not the best, but I would say pre Messi Ronaldo, he was the football icon for my
yeah,
generation.
yeah. He was the face of like late 90s, early 2000s football for even kids who didn't really know football who knew who David Beckham was, right? I was one of those kids.
Yeah.
Uh, my favorite player was David Beckham because I didn't watch football at that point, right?
Yeah.
That's who he was. Um, yeah, football should ball higher up bar for the Indian kids is what Bennett like Beckham was. I don't know if you know this.
Yes. Yes, I
Okay.
do.
Okay.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, great shout, right? Now, there's a Barclays man trend going around nowadays, right? 2001 to 2016 or whatever.
Yeah.
So that is my generation, right? I am a
Yeah.
certified Barclays man, and 2006 to 2012 had three really good sets of teams in Aston Villa, who had Gabby Agbon-Lahore, Gareth Barry, Ashley Young, and James Milner at the time, John Carew as well. You had Fulham, who had Breda Hangeland, Clint Dempsey,
Yeah.
um, and my favorite, who I wanted us to sign, but he went to Tottenham, Musa Dembele. And then there was Everton, right, who were really good at the time under David
Everton
Moyes,
guys. Yeah.
which is why, when Ferguson said that he should be a successor, it wasn't really a horrible decision or something like that at
Yep.
the time, because David Moyes had done great work with Everton, who had number one, Mikel Arteta, Tim
Arteta.
Cahill, Leighton Baines, Steven
Baines.
Pienaar, and my favorite, the player that I wanted us to sign more than anyone else, Marouane Fellaini, who was a great DM for Everton. Um, this is a really versatile player who plays DM, wins a lot of duels, and then when your team needs a goal, would go up front, elbow the hell out of everyone, win his duels and score those goals, right? I really felt like under a technical wizard like Wenger, if his touch and his technique improved, he could have been a world beater sort of, defensive midfielder for us. Um, and he went to United, where he did okay. I think he played for United at a time when they weren't doing that great, and he did his best for them. Um, I again like just a player that I really thought that would have taken us to another level. Him and Santi Cazorla in midfield would have been fantastic because he'd have come during that time. But yeah, Marwan Fellaini was always a really really good player who ended up going to I feel like the club at the wrong time when it was on the descent, and he could have been a much more prominent sort of league winning midfielder in a different era of Manchester United or in a different team at that time. Um, just a fantastic player. Again, not the cleanest on the ball, but just the sheer physical dominance in the middle of the pitch. And then again, like going up and nabbing a goal when necessary. Like I said, I like the player from his Everton time. It's more like a favorite, like a back pocket favorite Premier League player of mine who happened to play for Manchester United for a fair amount of time, and that's why he's here rather than his time specifically for Manchester United, if that makes sense.
No, that's definitely fair. Incredibly frustrating player because it felt like he would score a Fergie time goal at any moment with that leaping header with the hair and afro going everywhere and him looking like 6 inches taller than everybody else on the pitch. Uh, Great defensive midfielder, would put in the tackle. I mean, and yeah, you could never miss him on the pitch because of the hair. So you could always felt and saw his presence.
Yep. All right. So moving on to favorite Man United player number two in three, two, one. Right. So I was introduced to Ronaldo in like 2003, 4. I remember watching him at the Euros. Scrawny kid, incredible skill on the ball, just or doing all these tricks, and he would get kicked by all of these players who clearly looked much older and bigger than him, right? Because Ronaldo was a very scrawny teenager, nothing like the physical machine that he would become later on in his career. He still had like a good physique, but he was still like a kid. But here's the thing, right? Throughout those first 2 3 years, Ronaldo would do these incredible step overs, humiliate his opposing fullback, get kicked, but get back up and keep doing it, right? And keep doing it. Um, and then he evolved into absolute baller Ronaldo. 2006 to 2008, 2009, absolute phenomenon, right? The 2007-8 season where he scored like I think 42 goals in all competitions, incredible season, right? And you knew even then, even with your limited sort of experience watching football, as a kid, you were watching something generational, once in a lifetime level peaks. The 2007-8 season was when I think Emmanuel Adebayo scored like 25 league goals, and he was incredible for us. Fernando Torres was having his absolute peak season, and peak Fernando Torres, guys, was someone scary, right? And Ronaldo was eclipsing both of these guys' insane seasons, right? Imagine a season where two players score 25 odd league goals and they're clearly fighting for second best. That's how good Cristiano Ronaldo was at that point of time. Um, the outrageous free kicks, right? The one against Portsmouth, just iconic, right? The knuckleballs that for a couple of years were just going in and then never have ever gone in since. But he was scoring some of the most outrageous long shots during this period. It didn't matter which team you supported. It didn't matter how much you disliked his sort of bratty, unpleasant exterior. Every kid on the football pitch was trying out those knuckleball free kicks. I don't care who you were. I don't care which team you supported. You were trying to shoot those goals like Cristiano Ronaldo because what he was doing was just once in a lifetime stuff, right? So yeah, just you could see that relentlessness from the start. I just was rooting for that scrawny kid that I started watching in the Euros. And while he may have sort of grown into a slightly more unsavory or unpalatable character, um, for me, the Man United Ronaldo, the most fun version of him, was always that scrawny kid who just got back up and he was kicked again. And it's hard for me to sort of see him in any other way for that, at least that era of Ronaldo.
Yeah, I mean, completely agree that he just came on the scene and just entered. And this was the big bully Manchester United era. And the scrawny kid just enters, and already the entire team knows that, okay, this guy is different. So you could even see the respect of these Manchester United legends in just embracing Ronaldo pretty much from day one and being like, oh, this guy is different. And he really was. My number two, and to me the most iconic Manchester United player post Sir Alex Ferguson, is David De Gea. And that brings me great joy in some ways, because the fact that a goalkeeper is your most iconic player of the past 10 years is fantastic as a Chelsea fan.
Yeah, it is.
At the
And
same
long may
time,
it continue.
and long may it continue. True. But at the same time, De Gea was a lot of fun to watch on the pitch, especially against some of these struggling sides. Suddenly, Manchester United would come under a barrage of attacks, and it would just be David De Gea, like this lone figure, trying to stop shot after shot. He has also, I think, a bit of a skinnier frame versus other goalies.
Yeah.
So the saves would look even more impressive and
Yeah.
acrobatic.
Yeah.
Courtois is like such a hulking figure that
Yeah.
even if he dives, it's like it doesn't look that like that much motion.
It looks
But
harder to hit. Like it looks harder to miss Courtois than it is
yeah,
to hit him.
yeah, because Courtois is just huge.
Yeah.
But De Gea had he looked a little slender, so it looked even more incredible
Yeah.
when you would make these diving
Yeah.
saves. A great goalkeeper, I think, a little limited in terms of distribution and in terms of kind of collecting crosses. But apart from that, and honestly, just watching a compilation of his saves is one of the most impressive of, I think,
Yeah.
any player in the Premier League.
Yeah. Jesus loves, but Dave saves. Am I right?
Yes.
What a great meme that was.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, I mean, he was on my list. Yeah, like I said, long may it continue that he's the most iconic post-Sir Alex player. I think, I mean, some people may argue for Bruno as well, which is fair.
Yeah, yeah,
But hey, um, as long as it's either of those two for a long time, you know,
yes, we're all in a good place.
we're on a good place. I mean, to be fair, Bruno Fernandes is really good. I mean, if they get better players
Yeah,
around him, he could be part of a pretty successful team. So we don't know yet, but let's see, right? Anyway,
yeah.
favorite Manchester United player, number one in three, two, one.
Okay. So mine is Mr. Wayne Rooney. So again, I know MGK gave us good tribute to him earlier, but I felt like he's just born to play football. Like there these people who you see who just seem born to do one thing, and that was Wayne Rooney. He could play any position. Like honestly, I don't think he tried center back, but he probably could have done that as well. Incredible player, incredible at pretty much every single thing. So he had pace, he had strength, he could pass, he could shoot, he could tackle, he had the intelligence, he would make runs, he would score incredible bicycle kick goals, he would also score tap ins, he could poach. Uh, when Ronaldo came, he would give up some of kind of the goal scoring opportunities to him, just depending on whatever Sir Alex needed, Rooney would fit that role. I think it's kind of an underrated part that as versatile as Sir Alex was, Rooney was that versatile as well, and just kind of enabled United to like plug and play based on who they had available. So by moving Rooney on the pitch, you could kind of make sure you play your best players at other positions. Uh, and then, I mean, some of the greatest finishes I've ever seen. The power shot, I mean, just like rippling at the back of the net, just I mean, my favorite Rooney moment, incredibly, is not even him at United. It's like the goal he scored in the assist in the US in the
Yeah,
MLS,
yeah,
where he
yeah,
just slide tackles
yeah.
the incredible
That just
crossfield. It's just
only
it
Wayne Rooney
looks
can do that.
it doesn't look like it belonged in real life. It looked like it belonged in a movie. Like there's no
Yeah,
way
yeah,
this would happen in real life.
yeah.
But that's just the kind of player Wayne Rooney was.
That summed up Wayne Rooney in a nutshell, right? Like, um, only possibly Steven Gerrard would have maybe could
Yeah,
have maybe done
yeah,
that, but Wayne Rooney makes it look more Hollywood. I don't know how to describe it,
yes.
but
And he
absolute,
just got up and he did it so nonchalantly. It was
yeah,
hilarious.
yeah, just absolute warrior, right? The one player that Fergie sort of made concessions for, obviously because the squad itself was not as good at the time, but Wayne Rooney was that good, right? You touched upon it that some of those teams were not great. The reason Fergie could manage to win those titles was because Wayne Rooney was in those teams, and Wayne Rooney is just an incredible player. Whenever there were rumors of him, going to Arsenal or Chelsea, no fans said, "Oh, we don't want him." Everyone was like, "Oh, we know it's not going to happen, but it would be incredible if it did," because he could walk into any team at that point of time on the planet and just instantly improve them. Maybe not peak Barcelona, but that's really about it. Fantastic player, right? Um, my number one, honestly, very easy pick for me. Like I knew this instantly. Dimitar Berbatov, right? Um, came into the Premier League in 2006, I think. Had an absolute baller season. Berbatov and Keane, really underrated duo at Tottenham. 2006-7, I think. Um, really liked him then. Was sad that he was a Tottenham player because I was like, oh, that means like Arsenal probably can never sign him. Then goes to Manchester United, and I was really annoyed because he goes to the club that I didn't want him to go to because it's hard to root for a player when they go to Man United, and B because I knew that Man United were signing a fantastic player, right? Languid, looked like a Bond villain was just on the pitch, like masquerading as a footballer, just utterly nonchalant, like played with so much swagger and personality, outrageous flicks, tricks, touches, um, and yeah, I mean the goal where he orchestrates it from start to finish, where he's the one sort of playing every key pass and then scoring the goal by just getting there at the right time is a great goal. Scores 4 goals in one game against somebody, I forgot whom. The lovely scoop finish against some keeper. I think I'm not sure if it was against when he was playing with Fulham or whoever, but I'm not sure. And then the assist, right? The all-time great Premier League assist. Um, Absolute genius on the pitch. Um, Amazing footballer who happened to play for clubs that I didn't particularly like, but just an amazing footballer, one of my all-time favorites. And I was thinking this, like if we make a list of players that you wish played for your club kind of list, this guy would be in a conversation for some of the higher ranks, right? Absolute joy to watch, and that's why Dimitar Berbatov is my favorite Man United player ever.
Yeah, I mean, had him earlier on the list. Incredible talent, just mercurial player, and but capable of producing magical moment after magical moment. I think hat trick at Liverpool. Good. I think especially first couple of years was a great goal scorer, and then I think dropped off a little bit towards the end of his United tenure. Uh, didn't get along with Sir Alex too much, which probably limited things for Berbatov, but otherwise fantastic to watch.
Yep, cool. So that's our list, guys. Like, share, subscribe. I don't think this was too bad. We've tried to be balanced and objective and not, be absolute pricks about the whole thing.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell us which ones yours are in the comments? Like, share, subscribe, tell your friends, tell your enemies, tell your acquaintances, tell the strangers. And until then, have a great day, week, sorry, uh, month. Uh, yeah, cool. Signing
Okay.
off.
Toodaloo.